My landlord thought ignoring my repair requests would save him money until I found a way to cost him thousands without breaking a single law. TLDR, slumlord ignored months of repair requests, so I called city inspectors who hit him with $8,000 in fines and forced him to actually fix everything. So this happened about 6 months ago, and I'm still basking in the sweet, sweet satisfaction of it all. Some background. I'm a 26F graduate student renting a small one-bedroom in an older building. The rent was cheap for the area, should have been my first red flag, but the location was perfect for my commute to campus. The setup. When I first moved in, everything seemed fine. Sure, it was an older place, but nothing seemed broken. That honeymoon period lasted exactly 3 weeks. First, it was the heater. October rolls around, temperatures start dropping, and I discover that my heating system has 2 settings, broken and also broken. I email my landlord, Dave, not his real name, but he looks like a Dave, explaining the situation with photos of the thermostat that's clearly busted. His response? I'll get someone out there to look at it. Spoiler alert, nobody came out to look at it. 2 weeks later, I'm layering sweaters indoors like I'm prepping for an Arctic expedition, so I email again. Same response. Another week passes. Same email from me, same copy-paste response from him. Then November hits, and the kitchen pipes decide to join the party. At first, it's just a small drip under the sink. Then it becomes a steady leak. Then the ceiling above my stove starts developing a suspicious brown stain that grows bigger every day. More emails. More photos. More, I'll get someone out there to look at it. By December, I'm living in what I can only describe as a refrigerated water park. The heater still doesn't work. There's now a bucket permanently stationed under my kitchen sink, and I've started timing the drips like a very depressing metronome. But wait, there's more. The electrical outlet in my bathroom starts sparking occasionally. You know, just to add some excitement to my morning routine. Nothing says good morning like the possibility of electrocution while brushing your teeth. The documentation game. Here's where Past Me gets a gold star. I documented everything. Every email exchange, every photo, every date and time. I created a whole folder on my computer called Dave's Greatest Hits, with subfolders for each issue. My friends thought I was being paranoid. I prefer the term thorough. By January, my apartment had become a case study in creative problem solving. I had space heaters running constantly, my electric bill was astronomical, a complex system of buckets and towels managing the leaks, and I'd basically stopped using that bathroom outlet entirely. My patience finally snapped when I came home one day to find my ceiling had started sagging from water damage. The brown stain had evolved into what looked like a geographic feature. I emailed Dave with photos that honestly belonged in a horror movie. His response? I'll get someone out there to look at it. I may have screamed. My friend Maya suggested I just stop paying rent until he fixed everything. He can't evict you if you're protesting unsafe conditions, she said. But I'd heard enough horror stories about that approach. Even if you're technically in the right, eviction proceedings are a nightmare I didn't want to deal with. So instead, I did what any good graduate student does when faced with a problem. I researched the hell out of it. I spent an entire weekend diving deep into tenant rights laws in my city. Turns out, my city has incredibly strict rental property habitability codes. Like, really strict. And here's the kicker. Tenants can file formal complaints with the housing department, and the fines for violations are no joke. The more I read, the more excited I got. Dave wasn't just being a bad landlord. He was breaking actual laws. Multiple laws. Expensive laws. The plan comes together. I found the city's housing department website and discovered they have an online complaint form. It was beautiful in its simplicity. You upload photos, describe the issues, provide documentation of your attempts to resolve things with the landlord, and they send an inspector. The fines were listed right there on the website. Heating violations, $500 to $2,000 per violation. Plumbing violations, $300 to $1,500 per violation. Electrical safety violations, $800 to $3,000 per violation. Structural damage/water damage, $1,000 to $4,000 per violation. I spent an entire evening crafting my complaint. I uploaded every photo. attached every email exchange, and wrote a detailed timeline of events. It was like creating a dissertation, except this one might actually change my life for the better. Showtime. I submitted the complaint on a Tuesday. The website said to expect contact within 5 to 10 business days. They called me Thursday morning. Ms. Name, the inspector said, "We've reviewed your complaint and we'd like to schedule an inspection as soon as possible. Are you available to meet us at the property tomorrow?" Tomorrow. I was expecting weeks of bureaucratic delays, but apparently my documentation was so thorough and the violations so obvious that they fast-tracked it. I told my landlord that evening that there would be an inspection, as required by law. His response was priceless. "Inspection for what?" "Everything's fine." Sweet, naive Dave. The inspection. The inspector, Janet, arrived at 10 a.m. sharp with a clipboard, a camera, and what I can only describe as the expression of someone who'd seen this exact scenario 100 times before. It took her exactly 15 minutes to find every issue I'd reported. Then she started finding issues I didn't even know existed. "There's mold behind this wall," she said, pulling out some kind of detection device near the water damage. "And this wiring." She opened up the electrical panel. "This is not up to code. At all." She took photos of everything. And I mean everything. She even found a gas leak I didn't know about. Apparently my stove had been slowly poisoning me for months. Cool. The whole inspection took 2 hours. By the end, Janet had filled out 7 pages of violations. "Your landlord will receive a formal notice within 48 hours, she told me. "He'll have 30 days to fix the major safety issues and 60 days for the rest, or the fines start accumulating." The reckoning. Dave called me that Saturday. Not texted, actually called. I almost didn't recognize his voice because I'd never heard him sound panicked before. "What the hell did you do?" were his exact words. I calmly explained that I'd filed a complaint with the housing department because months of emails hadn't resolved the safety issues in my apartment. "Do you know how much this is going to cost me?" he shouted. I did, actually. I'd done the math. Based on Janet's report, Dave was looking at approximately $8,000 in fines if he didn't fix everything. And that was just the initial fine. If he continued to ignore the issues, the penalties would keep accumulating. "Maybe you should get someone out there to look at it," I suggested sweetly. Funny thing about facing thousands of dollars in city fines, it really motivates a landlord to suddenly care about maintenance. Monday morning, there was a heating repair truck in the parking lot. Tuesday, a plumber. Wednesday, an electrician. Thursday, a team of guys ripping out the water-damaged ceiling and walls. For 2 weeks, my apartment was a construction zone. Dave had to put me up in a hotel, city requirement, when the unit becomes temporarily uninhabitable during repairs. But when I moved back in, holy shit, I had a brand new heating system that actually worked, new plumbing throughout the kitchen. The entire bathroom had been rewired with GFCI outlets and everything. The water damage had been completely repaired with new drywall, paint, and even new cabinet doors where the old ones had warped. Dave had basically been forced to renovate my entire apartment. The sweet ending. I'm writing this from my beautifully heated, properly plumbed, safely wired apartment. My rent didn't go up. There are laws about that too. Raising rent in retaliation for complaints is illegal. Dave now responds to maintenance requests within 24 hours, probably because he never wants to see another city inspector as long as he lives. The best part? I ran into my neighbor last week, and apparently word has gotten around to other tenants in the building about what happened. 3 more units have filed their own complaints for various issues, and Dave is scrambling to fix everything before the inspectors show up. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is just following the rules and letting bureaucracy do its thing. Dave learned an expensive lesson about what happens when you ignore your legal obligations as a landlord. My heating bill is now reasonable. I don't need to own a single bucket, and I can brush my teeth without fear of electrocution. Life is good. Update: several people have asked about the specifics of how I documented everything and filed the complaint. I'll put together a guide for anyone dealing with similar issues. Knowledge is power, people. Edit. Thanks for the gold. And to answer the common question, yes, Dave and I are still in a landlord-tenant relationship. It's awkward but professional. He does his job now, I pay my rent on time, and we both pretend that conversation where he screamed at me never happened. It works. Story 2. My boss kept canceling my vacations for years, so I turned my PTO into my resignation and the longest trip of my life. I worked for a mid-sized company for almost 8 years. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid decently, the commute wasn't bad, and I genuinely liked most of my coworkers. What I didn't like? My boss. Let's call him Gary. Gary had this unspoken belief that vacation days were optional suggestions rather than something you actually got to take. His logic was that if something important came up, you should be willing to cancel your personal plans for the good of the team. I'm not talking about a real emergency. I'm talking about things like a client deciding they might need a meeting in 2 weeks, someone quitting unexpectedly and Gary needing all hands on deck, or the vague "this is a busy time for us" excuse, which seemed to apply year-round. The first time it happened to me, I was annoyed but understanding. My vacation was pushed back a month. Fine. The second time, I'd already booked flights, and I had to eat the airline change fees because Gary canceled my time off the week before I left. He said, "You can go next quarter." I should have learned my lesson, but I'm stubborn. I kept saving my vacation days, hoping to take a proper break. Fast forward 3 years, yes, 3. I had over 4 weeks of unused PTO saved up, and I decided to finally take a 2-week trip abroad. I booked everything 6 months in advance, got official HR approval, and even made sure all my work was lined up so nobody would have to cover for me much. 1 week before I was supposed to leave, Gary called me into his office. "Gary, hey, about your vacation. I'm going to have to cancel it." Me? You're joking. Gary, we're short-staffed right now. You can take it next year. Next year. This would have been the 3rd year in a row that he canceled my vacation. I told him point blank that this was unacceptable, and his response was, "Sometimes sacrifices have to be made." That was my breaking point. I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I just went back to my desk, closed my work laptop, and started job hunting immediately. Within 2 weeks, I had an offer from another company, higher pay, better benefits, fully remote, and a written guarantee that PTO was use it or lose it. The cherry on top? They wanted me to start in 5 weeks, which lined up perfectly with my already planned trip. Now came the fun part. I waited until the Friday before my canceled vacation to hand Gary my resignation letter. His face went pale when I told him my last day would be the following Friday. "Gary, but you can't take time off during your notice period." Me? I'm not taking time off. I'm using my remaining PTO. HR already approved it. I had so much unused PTO that my official last working day was that Friday, but my final paycheck included 4 full weeks of vacation payout. I left the office that day grinning ear to ear. The following week, instead of being chained to my desk, I was sipping espresso in Italy. I extended my trip by an extra 2 weeks thanks to that PTO payout, visiting 5 countries in total. Oh, and just to add some salt to the wound, halfway through my trip, I mailed a postcard to the office that said, "Finally made it here. Hope you're not too short-staffed." I never heard from Gary again, but I did get a message from a former coworker saying my resignation caused a domino effect. 2 other people quit within a month, and management finally had to address the fact that nobody could take their earned time off. I didn't just get my revenge. I got my life back. Story 3. Our teacher thought favoritism was just motivating students until I proved she was rigging grades, and the school board made her regret it. TLDR, AP English teacher played favorites with grades. I documented everything, compared work quality, and got the school board to investigate. She lost her department head position and had to retroactively fix everyone's grades. This happened during my junior year of high school, and it's probably the most satisfying academic justice I've ever witnessed. I'm sharing this because I know other students deal with unfair teachers, and sometimes you can do something about it. So I'm taking AP English Literature with Mrs. Peterson, fake name. This class is crucial because its weighted GPA looks good for college apps, and I genuinely love literature. I've always been a strong English student, won a few writing contests in middle school, consistently got A's in previous English classes, the whole deal. But something was off with Peterson's class from day one. There was this group of about 5 to 6 students who could do no wrong. Let's call them the Golden Circle. These weren't necessarily the smartest kids in class, but they had a few things in common. They were popular, their parents were involved in school fundraising, and a couple of them were athletes that Peterson always went to watch play. Meanwhile, the rest of us, about 20 students, seemed to exist in some kind of academic purgatory where nothing we did was ever quite good enough. The red flags start flying. The first major red flag came 3 weeks into school. We had to write a personal narrative essay, and I was excited because creative writing is my strongest area. I spent hours crafting this piece about my grandmother's immigration story, weaving in themes about identity and belonging. I was genuinely proud of it. Grade: C+. The feedback? Lacks emotional depth. Try to connect more personally with your subject matter. Meanwhile, Jessica, one of the Golden Circle members, wrote about her summer vacation to Europe. I'm not exaggerating when I say it read like a travel brochure. The Eiffel Tower was really tall and pretty. I ate croissants and they were yummy. Her grade? A. Her feedback? Wonderful use of descriptive language and personal reflection. I thought it was just one assignment. Maybe Peterson was being extra critical of me to push me harder. But then it happened again. And again. The pattern becomes undeniable. By October, it was clear this wasn't random. In class discussions, Peterson would light up when Golden Circle kids made basic observations, praising their insightful analysis. When I or other regular students made more complex points, we'd get a polite nod, and then she'd move on quickly. The breaking point came with our midterm project. We had to analyze symbolism in The Great Gatsby. I wrote a 10-page paper examining the green light as a symbol of American capitalism's false promises, connecting it to historical context and other literary works. I even found academic sources that supported my interpretation. Grade: B. Feedback: interesting ideas, but analysis could be deeper. Tyler, one of the Golden Circle, turned in 4 pages about how the green light represented hope and dreams and stuff. I saw his paper because we did peer reviews. It had multiple spelling errors, and his quotes weren't even cited correctly. His grade? A. That night, I called my mom crying. She suggested I talk to Peterson directly, so I did. I stayed after class the next day and asked Peterson about the grading. I was respectful, just wanted to understand how I could improve. Her response was eye-opening. You know, some students just naturally connect with literature in ways that resonate with me as an educator. I can't help that certain voices shine brighter than others. Then she said the kicker. Maybe if you spent less time trying to impress me with big words and more time finding your authentic voice, you'd see better results. I walked out feeling like I'd been gaslit. But I also realized something important. She'd basically admitted that grading was based on who she liked, not on actual work quality. The investigation begins. That weekend, I made a decision. Instead of just complaining to my parents or the principal without proof, I was going to document everything systematically. I started keeping copies of all my assignments before turning them in. I also began discreetly asking classmates if they'd share their graded work, so I could compare. Most were happy to. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd noticed the pattern. Here's where it gets interesting. I also started showing my assignments to other teachers. My history teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, had always been fair with me, so I asked if he'd review one of my English essays just to give me feedback on my writing. His response: "This is excellent work. College-level analysis." I'd give this an A without hesitation. Peterson had given it a C+. I did the same thing with my chemistry teacher, Mrs. Liu, who used to teach English before switching to science. Same result. She thought my work was strong and couldn't understand the low grades. Building the case. By December, I had a portfolio that was damning. My work versus Golden Circle work. My 8-page poetry analysis with 12 scholarly sources. B. Jessica's 3-page poetry analysis with Wikipedia as her only source. A. My creative writing piece that won second place in a regional contest. C+. Tyler's creative piece with multiple grammar errors. A. My in-class essay about Macbeth themes. B. Golden Circle members' essay that completely misunderstood the plot. A. But here's the smoking gun. I also collected data on class participation grades. Peterson graded us on discussion contributions. I started tracking who said what and how it was received. Golden Circle members could say literally anything and get marked as excellent participation. Meanwhile, students like me could make insightful comments and get marked as satisfactory or needs improvement. I had spreadsheets. I had photo evidence. I had testimonials from other teachers about my work quality. The anonymous tip. Right before winter break, I anonymously submitted everything to both the principal and the school board. I wrote a formal complaint explaining the grading discrepancies and included all my documentation. I made it clear this wasn't just about me. I included examples of how other non-favored students were being graded unfairly too. I also suggested they look at Peterson's grade distribution over the past few years to see if there was a pattern. Then I waited. The quiet investigation. When we came back from winter break, nothing seemed different at first. But then I started noticing small things. The vice principal happened to observe our class twice in 1 week. Peterson seemed more nervous than usual. I overheard her on the phone with someone saying, "I can explain the grade distributions." A few weeks later, my friend Sarah mentioned that her mom, who works in the district office, heard there was some kind of academic review happening with one of the AP teachers. The reckoning. In late February, I got called to the principal's office. My heart was racing. Had they figured out I was the one who complained? Principal Williams was there with the vice principal and someone I didn't recognize. Later found out she was from the district. They asked me about my experience in Peterson's class, if I felt my grades were fair, if I'd noticed any patterns and how different students were treated. I answered honestly, but didn't reveal that I was the one who'd filed the complaint. Then Principal Williams said something that made my day. We've been reviewing grade distributions and assignment quality across several classes. We may need to make some adjustments to grades from this year. The aftermath. 2 weeks later, the bomb dropped. Peterson announced to our class that there had been a district-wide review of grading practices and that some grades would be adjusted to ensure consistency and fairness. My grades went up across the board. That C+ personal narrative became an A. The B- Gatsby paper became an A. Nearly every assignment I'd done was bumped up 1 to 2 letter grades. But I wasn't the only one. About half the class got grade increases, basically everyone who wasn't in the Golden Circle. The sweet details. Here's where it gets really satisfying. Peterson lost her department head position. She'd been the English department chair for 5 years. Not anymore. She was put on what everyone knew was a performance improvement plan. Suddenly, there were administrators observing her classes constantly. The Golden Circle's grades got adjusted too, downward. Turns out when the district reviewed their actual work quality, those inflated grades couldn't be justified. My GPA jumped from 3.7 to 3.9 with the corrected grades, which made a real difference for college applications. For the rest of the year, Peterson was like a completely different teacher. She graded fairly, participated in class discussions without obvious favorites, and actually provided useful feedback on assignments. She never found out I was the one who reported her, but several classmates figured it out and thanked me privately. One girl, Maria, told me she'd been thinking about dropping out of the AP track because she thought she wasn't smart enough. The grade corrections showed her she was actually doing really well. Peterson had just been undervaluing her work. The lesson. The whole experience taught me that sometimes adults abuse their power, but there are systems in place to address it if you approach it the right way. You need evidence, not just complaints. You need to show patterns, not isolated incidents. Peterson probably thought she was just motivating students or maintaining high standards. But what she was really doing was destroying confidence and potentially affecting students' futures with her bias. I heard through the grapevine that she's much more careful about grading fairness now. She's still teaching, didn't get fired, but she knows someone's always watching. And honestly, that's probably the best outcome. She learned her lesson, students are being treated fairly, and the system worked the way it's supposed to. Update: for those asking about the specific evidence I collected, I made a simple spreadsheet comparing assignment quality versus grades, took photos of graded work with permission, and got written feedback from other teachers about my writing quality. The key was showing a clear pattern over time, not just complaining about one grade. Edit: yes, my college applications went much better with a corrected GPA. I'm now at my first choice school partially thanks to those grade corrections, making a difference in my class rank. Edit 2. To answer questions about whether this was legal/ethical, students have a right to fair grading, and anonymous reporting of academic misconduct is encouraged by most school districts. I didn't break any rules. I just documented rule breaking.